All right, let's just jump right into this explainer and completely shatter this myth that you have to be rich to start building wealth in real estate. Seriously, today we're taking a hard look at the fork in the road of real estate investing, and we are specifically tailoring this for those of you who might be feeling totally locked out because you're sitting on, say, a $50,000 salary.
So if you're sitting there thinking, well, I'm priced out of the market because of my current paycheck, I am here to tell you the answer is absolutely 100% yes, you can do this. And we're going to show you exactly how. Some of the absolute most successful investors out there today actually started with pretty modest incomes and literally almost no capital. It's not about having this giant mountain of cash sitting in a bank. It's really just about knowing the right paths to take.
And honestly, the difference here is just striking. You don't need a $60,000 mountain of cash to buy a $300,000 property. No way. Not when there are specialized government programs that let you get your foot in the door for as little as 10 grand. Most people hear real estate and their brain immediately just goes, oh, 20% down. But as we'll see, investing isn't always like buying a traditional home.
Okay, so here's our roadmap for today. First, the real estate wealth barrier. Second, passive investing with REITs. Third, funding options for lower incomes. Fourth, top active investing strategies. Fifth, understanding your loan estimate. And finally, making your first move.
Let's kick things off with part 1, the real estate wealth barrier, overcoming the initial hurdles.
Moving right along to part 2, passive investing with REITs, the hands-off route.
Okay, enter the REIT, or Real Estate Investment Trust. Think of this as a vehicle, actually established by Congress way back in 1960, that lets you buy into massive, large-scale commercial real estate. We're talking malls, big apartment complexes, stuff like that. And you do it just like you would buy a stock. It's a genuinely fantastic way to earn a slice of the income produced through commercial property without ever fixing a leaky toilet. Plus, because of some really special tax treatments, a REIT actually doesn't pay corporate tax as long as it distributes at least 90% of its taxable income right back to the shareholders as dividends.
Now here's where it gets really interesting. What's absolutely crucial to understand is that the SEC classifies a major fork even within REITs. You've got publicly traded versus non-traded. And understanding this difference, it is critical if you want to protect your investment. Publicly traded REITs, they're listed on major exchanges like the New York Stock Exchange. That makes them highly liquid. You can literally buy and sell them with the click of a button. But those non-traded REITs? Yeah, completely different story.
So the really big takeaway here is that while non-traded REITs might offer some pretty high dividend yields to lure you in, they essentially lock up your money. They charge these massive, 9 to 10% upfront fees, and there's almost zero transparent pricing. Seriously, you might not even get an estimate of what your shares are actually worth until 18 months after their offering closes. Those massive upfront fees mean only a tiny portion of your hard-earned money is actually going into the real estate itself. So consider this a stark reminder to thoroughly research what you are buying into.
Let's jump to part 3, funding options for lower incomes, breaking the capital barrier.
All right, let's build your funding toolkit. From asking the seller to literally act as the bank, to finding local city grants, you have at least 7 distinct paths to finance your very first deal. Just to give you an idea, VA loans offer 0% down for military veterans, and that's with absolutely no private mortgage insurance. Or how about USDA loans? Also 0% down if you're looking at designated rural properties. And hey, even if you don't qualify for those specific ones, local municipalities often have down payment assistance grants that you literally don't even have to pay back. How amazing is that?
580. Just let that sink in for a second. That is the surprisingly low minimum credit score required for an FHA loan. Think about that. Even with less than perfect credit and a really lenient debt-to-income ratio allowance of up to 57%, you could use an FHA loan to buy a duplex, a triplex, or even a fourplex, and you'd only be putting 3.5% down. Incredible!
Moving to part 4, top active investing strategies, getting your hands dirty.
When we set these side by side, you essentially have a choice: drastically reduce your monthly living expenses or supercharge your equity growth entirely tax-free. With house hacking, you use that low-down FHA loan we just talked about to buy a multi-unit property. You live in one unit and the renters in the other units, they literally pay your mortgage. It's basically the ultimate set of training wheels for becoming a landlord. On the flip side, the live and flip requires you to actually get your hands dirty. You're living in a construction zone where you might, occasionally eat drywall dust for breakfast. But here is the kicker. If you stay for 2 years, the profits you make when you finally sell are totally exempt from capital gains tax.
Now, if you can piece together that initial capital, maybe you bring in a partner to help, the BRRRR method is hands down the ultimate way to stretch a small amount of money across an entire real estate portfolio. By buying a distressed property, fixing it up, renting it out, and then refinancing it based on its brand new, much higher value, you pull your original cash right back out. Then, you use that exact same cash to go buy your next property. It is just incredibly capital efficient.
All right, Part 5, Understanding Your Loan Estimate, Navigating the Paperwork.
Look, choosing the right home loan is literally just as important as choosing the right home. You have got to prepare to shop around. A lot of people, they'll spend months looking for a house, right? And then they just take the very first mortgage offer to them without a second thought. Please do not fall into that trap.
The timeline here is actually super strict. Your lender is legally required to hand you a standardized 3-page loan estimate within 3 business days of your application. And this beautiful document completely replaces those old, super confusing good faith estimates. It clearly lays out your loan term, your interest rate, your projected monthly payment. Yeah, that includes escrow for property taxes and insurance, and exactly how much cash you're going to need to close the deal. No more guessing games.
You are absolutely free to shop around for third-party services, but if you pick from the lender's approved list, those quoted fees are protected by a very strict 10% tolerance limit at closing. And this is a huge deal for protecting your budget. Basically, if a lender says a service is going to cost $100 and you pick their recommended provider, they legally cannot charge you more than $110 at closing for that service. It completely prevents those nasty last-minute surprises when your budget is already super tight. Finally, Part 6, Making Your First Move, the Action Plan.
By following these exact steps, starting with just a totally free conversation with a lender to find out what you can actually afford, you completely remove the guesswork. Seriously, talk to a couple of local banks and brokers. Find out your true budget. Then, define your strategy. If you're buying a hold property, analyzing deals for year-one cash flow is absolutely non-negotiable for a lower-income investor. Why? Well, because you literally cannot afford to be out of pocket if the water heater unexpectedly breaks in month 2. Cash flow is what mitigates your overall risk. Now, you might have to analyze 50, maybe even 100 deals before you find the right one. But you've got to be disciplined, negotiate hard, and whatever you do, don't be afraid to walk away.
Remember, your income doesn't define your potential as an investor. Some of the most successful investors out there, they started exactly where you are. They focused on steady cash flow to mitigate risk instead of falling for some get-rich-quick scheme. And look, your first property is always going to be the hardest. But once you prove to yourself that you can find, finance, and actually manage one property, the second one becomes significantly easier. The barrier to entry is officially broken. So the only real question left is, which road are you going to take? The hands-off REIT portfolio or the hands-on property hustle? Whether you choose to invest your money in publicly traded REITs while you literally sleep, or you use an FHA loan to house hack your way to practically zero living expenses, the tools are right here for the taking. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Now ask yourself, if the only thing holding you back was the myth of needing a massive salary, what's your excuse now?